Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square's state government reporter. And in today's episode, another Washington business plans to expand outside the state of Washington. Not good news for us. And more from Downtown Seattle Association President John Scholes on the alarming downtown office vacancy rate and job exodus. Along with that, passionate testimony from a Seattle man before the Seattle City Council about how a bullet nearly claimed the life of his infant son. If you didn't see this testimony before the council last week, it's pretty compelling. Crime is run out of control along a busy stretch of Aurora. People have been begging Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson for months to do something about it. And then finally, Labor and Industries is on the scene, on the ground, on the site of that Longview industrial accident at the Nippon Pulp and Paper Mill 1 week ago today. They have opened officially an investigation into finding out if anything was missed, if any safety inspections, any safety reports were missed. They've already been looking into it, but now that all of the victims, all 11 victims, have been recovered from the site, they can move in on the ground and begin their investigation. So let's dive into today's episode. Janicki Industries, a privately owned engineering and manufacturing company, mostly in aerospace. The company currently has about 1 million square feet of facilities across Washington and Utah, employing more than 2,000 people. They made it official today, although it's been rumored for many weeks. They are not going to expand in Washington state, not with their gigantic expansion plan. They're going to do it instead in Great Falls, Montana. And Montana Governor Greg Gianforte was thrilled to make the announcement, as you see in this X post today.
We are thrilled to welcome Janicki Industries to Montana, and we celebrate the company's $800 million investment that will create over 1,000 good-paying jobs right here in Montana. As Janicki expands in Great Falls, we send a message loud and clear that Montana is open for business. The Treasure State is proud to attract job creators like Janicki that choose to expand from high-tax, high-regulation states to take advantage of our unmatched quality of life, low taxes, and strong workforce. I look forward to seeing the impact of this significant investment for years to come.
First phase of the campus construction is expected to begin this summer and be open by the end of next year. And within the first 5 years, they expect to create 1,000 jobs there, with total employment exceeding 2,000 jobs once the campus construction is complete. So, not happening here, happening in Montana. And in a press release, more from Montana's governor, John Janicki, president of Janicki Industries, wrote, "Our footprint in Washington has continued to grow, but is slowing due to ever increasing regulations and lack of business understanding at an executive and legislative level." So then I reached out this morning to Janicki and was able to get a hold of and interview Nick Lavaca. He is Janicki's communication and education outreach director, to learn more about why not expand here. Had kind of an inkling based on the stories we've been covering for weeks and months here, including all the new tax hikes and the coming income tax and regulatory burden on business. So I wanted him to explain to me, you love it here, you started here, hugely successful in the state of Washington, but now you're going to make this expansion in Big Sky Country instead.
We've been looking at an expansion plan for quite a while. We really dove deep into it in the last year or so and really just started looking into other areas. Washington is a beautiful place, as you know. You're living in Washington, I'm living in Washington. It's a little bit of a bittersweet because John and Peter's family are in Washington. All their grandkids and their kids are local to them, and they love the area. Washington, as you know, is making it a little bit more difficult to do business here. And it's also got a couple of challenges, such as really high energy cost and then also, housing. They've put in a lot of regulations that make it difficult for the employees to have that American dream, to be able to own a home. And so that's where the Janickis really want to see a place that their employees that expand and join the company where they're at can enjoy that same American dream that a lot of us here actually have had over the years, but it's making it more difficult for new people to come in and enjoy that. One thing I did is I took our current electrical usage for our Hamilton campus and I just weighed that against the Montana Power Company and looked at the difference in cost of what that same usage was in 2024 and 2025, what we paid and what the cost would have been had we been over there. That's pretty substantial, right? So definitely that's one area of much lower cost. Well, that creates capital. That capital can therefore go back into the company and it allows us to grow farther.
So, Janicki Industries today, just the latest to announce plans not to move out. They're not cutting any jobs here, but their gigantic expansion plans are going to happen to Montana's benefit, not here in Washington. And all those empty office buildings in downtown Seattle, dragging down property values. We have more of our conversation, which I shared part of in yesterday's episode with you, with the Downtown Seattle Association president and CEO, John Scholes. He's very concerned about the vacancy rate. I think the office vacancy rate in Seattle now is over 33 to 35%. I've seen all of those numbers. So here's what John Scholes has to say about that vacancy rate and the job exodus in the city of Seattle.
Vacancy rate that we face today of plus 30% in downtown Seattle. We've not had that level of vacancy over our history. And, we've been in some tough spots before during the Great Recession. In the 1980s, there were a number of new office buildings that all came online and were completed around the same time. And that helped inflate the vacancy rate significantly at that period. But this is somewhat unique. And the impacts are not just for the folks who own office buildings. The impacts are felt more broadly than that because it's having an impact on the value of commercial property in downtown. And we've lost billions of dollars of property value from office buildings downtown. And that has an impact on residents in our city because our city's so dependent on property tax collections. It shifts the burden to residential property within the city. So a thriving downtown is good for the rest of the city. And getting that office vacancy rate down, not just good for the folks who own the buildings, but really good for our tax base and for everybody that's paying in, whether you're residential or commercial. And right now we have too many barriers and too many additional costs for locating and growing jobs in our city relative to the other choices that employers have. And we've lost about 40,000 jobs in the downtown over the last 4 years. We're going in the wrong direction after 15 years of really robust and steady job growth. And so we're ringing the alarm bell that we're not in the same place we were in 2017 and 2018 and 19 when we had all these cranes in the air and Amazon was growing at this record clip and we had other tech companies coming to locate here and grow. We're in a different period and we need to take stock of the current reality and what the impacts are to a lot of things we all care about: a strong city tax base, a city that's affordable for residents and small business. And right now, the depression in commercial value because of a high vacancy, because of significant business taxes, is having a lot of negative consequences for many different sectors. And I don't know that City Hall is quite connecting the dots there. And we are urging that they look at how these things are connected and that we have a mindset and approach that says Seattle's open for business. We want to be competitive to other places and other choices that companies have. There's good reasons to be here. And we need to give people more confidence that it's going to be a place where they can be successful, where the regulations and the tax environment's fair and predictable. And that we're also sending a signal that you're welcomed here, you're supported here, you're adding value, we want you here.
Now, according to recent reports from the King County Assessor's Office, the city's most valuable skyscrapers have lost $3.7 billion in value since 2022. So, again, approximately a third of downtown commercial space remains vacant right now. Of course, Starbucks is doing their expansion in Nashville. Oracle has been moving out of Washington State. Nike, North Face, Vans, Lululemon, Saks, Abercrombie and Fitch. That's just to name a few of the businesses either relocating out of the state completely or making expansion plans outside of the state of Washington. Now, Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson has announced finally a police crackdown on Aurora Avenue North in response to a surge in shootings and prostitution along that corridor, but only after residents created makeshift roadblocks on their own and then complained to the city council. Now, last week, one of those to testify before the council was Jake Wallach. He was just one more than a dozen residents who showed up at the council meeting on the 26th, and he shared with them something that happened to him, something a very close call involving his infant child. Here's part of his testimony before Seattle City Council last week.
It's gang-led, organized, violent human trafficking, and the city is turning their eyes. I live there. I can't turn my eyes. I can't wait for the strategic framework plan. In the past 2 weeks, my house was hit by gunfire. I have a 6-week-old baby, and it hit 2 feet above my baby's window. A week later, my neighbor had a bullet go through their window into their bedroom.
Thank you.
I want to know what the city will do, even though it's politically inconvenient, to urgently shift our policy, and I want to know who's going to actually step up to lead in our city.
As my colleague Randy Diamond noted in his article on this Monday at the Center Square Washington page, residents at that meeting said part of the issue for them is that the city attorney's office is really refusing to enforce a city law that was passed 2 years ago. You may recall these are the stay out of drug areas, soda areas. Basically, if you're loitering in one of these places and you're, caught dealing drugs or prostitution in this area, the law allows judges to order you to stay out of that area, basically a no trespass zone for you, because we don't want this, activity to continue. The problem has been there's been very little prosecution of those areas. Now, this ordinance was pushed by former city attorney Ann Davidson, but was opposed by current city attorney Erica Adams, who defeated Ann Davidson in the November election. A week after the disaster at Longview's Nippon Dynawave site, the Washington Department of Labor and Industries is finally granted full access to that site because all of the bodies have been recovered, all 11 victims. 9 of those victims recovered at the site. And then the other 2 victims were folks that died at the hospital. One with severe burns that died days later. Another who was transported initially on the day of the accident 1 week ago today, but then pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. Now, L&I is promising to get to the bottom of this and figure out what happened with their official investigation. There is no evidence, I should say, at this point, that there were any safety concerns raised specifically about that tank and the catastrophic failure and all of that liquid that then spilled out, causing kind of a rippling, not explosions or implosions, but you've seen the images. We have more to show you, images from the site that show the vehicles and the surrounding, infrastructure on the site property that were severely damaged when all of this liquid came, pouring out as this gigantic tank sort of collapsed onto itself like a tin can. And we've also reported here at the Center Square that the wife of one of the deceased victims has retained legal counsel, and she says that her husband has been raising safety concerns. We don't know if any of that was specific to this tank that failed or not, but she said her husband had been saying he was very concerned about some of the things he was seeing at that site. So Labor and Industries will, of course, get to the bottom of it. Meantime, you've got the Environmental Protection Agency, State Department of Ecology, Fish and Wildlife, all on site, checking the waterways, monitoring the drinking water, and then checking the ditch and drainage systems there to make sure that things are safe. There's been no evidence at this point that the Columbia River has been impacted, but there's more than a couple thousand dead fish. And I spoke yesterday with Britton Ransford with Washington Fish and Wildlife.
To date, we've had nearly 2,000 dead fish collected throughout the ditch system, and we do expect that number to increase as flushing operations continue. The recovery effort of these deceased fish has been somewhat limited just due to like slippery slopes and like high ledges to get into these areas. I think it's important to note that the majority of these fish are fish we expected to be present within these areas, mostly introduced or non-native fish, including the common carp, catfish, bass, peamouth. But as crews continue to jump in and recover these fish, we'll keep looking at identifications moving forward. Yeah, so based on current testing, our current we're operating under these fish died almost initially due to the high pH levels. Fish like to pH generally between like 6.5 and 8.5, and when it gets outside that range, it can result in irritation and or death. That high spike in pH initially likely irritated the gills and made it difficult for them to breathe. So I think what you're seeing is fish no longer continuing to die, but this was an initial impact due to direct exposure, and that as the flushing continues, you're seeing more fish congregate in certain areas that maybe weren't visible. And obviously crews are working to collect fish in those areas at this time.
So again, the Columbia River remains open for fishing and recreation. pH levels, they say, from the river are fine. No evidence of any contaminants actually reaching the river. They've been doing a flushing that they normally do this time of year anyway to sort of get pH levels down, normally doing sort of that on an expedited and increased rate because of the disaster from last week. But again, no confirmed impacts to fish or wildlife in the Columbia River, but about 2,300 dead fish now that have been recovered by Fish and Wildlife. And they don't want anyone touching that. They just want you contacting Fish and Wildlife if you see evidence of that, documenting it with, a photograph, and of course, giving them a precise location where they can go and do that recovery. So that is the latest for today's episode, June 2nd, this Tuesday, for Washington in Focus Daily. Check out our Center Square Washington page for more articles like this. And again, hope you have a great day. Join us again tomorrow.